Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest interview on Coaches Uncaged with Emily Walker, who's one of the Animas faculty. But I'll let you introduce yourself, Emily. Have I got your second name right? Because I know you changed it recently, right?
Yeah, you did, yes, yeah. I got married recently, so I thought, yeah, and I like the name Emily Walker. I mean, didn't have to take my husband's surname, but I prefer Walker as a surname, so it worked really well. So yeah, just changed it, kind of across the board, probably a few months ago.
Yeah, because it was Johnston before, so I had to kind of really catch myself then before I introduced. But yeah, would you like to do a little bit of an introduction to who you are as a coach, perhaps the makeup of your coaching business, if you like? For those that can't listen for the first time, I guess the focus of these interviews are really your personal journey to building a coaching success and a successful coaching business rather.
Yeah.
And I'll just share something with you before you do your introduction as well. When I got an email off you, I looked at your signature and I was like, wow. Look at all that stuff that you're doing. I felt really inadequate. I was like, I need to do more stuff. I was like, I'm going to read it out because I copied it. It was ICF accredited life coach, trainer, coach supervisor, coach mentor, emotional resilience specialist, Reiki therapist. I was so impressed by the variety. So I think it's going to be an interesting chat.
Yes.
Hopefully I've not done the introduction for you, but I'll pass over to you to kind of give
That's absolutely fine. I've actually taken a few things off there as well. I think my work has very much evolved organically over time. So what am I doing at the moment? At the moment, yes, I work in a school 2 days a week as a coach, a wellbeing coach, mostly around wellbeing. And that's for students, but I'm also available for staff too, which is really nice. And that's been working really, really well. I really enjoy that work, the job in itself. I've also literally just run a wellbeing retreat for staff at that school and the brother school they have too. Again, went really, really, really well. So I'm just writing a report about that at the moment. That's one of my admin jobs this week. But I've been running wellbeing days for the particular school I work in for the past 4 years or so. So that's pretty much my work in schools outside of my schoolwork, because schoolwork is only 2 days a week during term time. Outside of that, I obviously am one of the faculty for Animas, so I'm probably running a couple of modules a month. I have really, really enjoyed that work. I'm doing that for many years. And as a coach, I tend to focus, a lot of my work is around well-being and around emotional resilience, because I think emotional resilience is super, super important, particularly at the moment as life apparently becomes more and more uncertain. I think we need to bring in more tools and techniques to boost our emotional resilience and to really empower ourselves and to help ourselves to be able to move forward effectively. So that's definitely something that I bring into my work in schools with teenagers, but it's also something I bring into my work with adults too. Plenty of adults there in need of that kind of exploration and work. So I work with adults in that way, both privately and also in businesses, and I run workshops too around that sort of thing as well. And then my other work is really with coaches, so training coaches for Animas, but then also working with coaches as a supervisor, whether that's one-to-one or group supervision, running my own groups, and also I'm starting another group actually in the autumn. That was just kind of having a few email conversations about that recently, and also doing mentoring. So I work as a mentor to help coaches to achieve their ICF accreditation, either ACC or PCC. I also work with Natasha Harris and Marcus Stone. We run the Trio Mentoring Group, which is a really, really fun group to work with. And we take groups of coaches through that process as well. And it's such fun working with other coaches. It's just brilliant. So we've got a great team there, and we really enjoy taking coaches through that process.
Nice. Yeah.
Oh, and the Reiki, I'm just thinking the Reiki. So my husband's a sound therapist. So we run sound baths, and I provide Reiki during sound baths to the participants. Reiki is a really interesting way of working. It, in some levels, it seems quite woo-woo, but just there's something very tangible about it as well. And so I work with him when we run sound baths, and the sound bath actually amplifies the process of Reiki. So that's also really interesting work. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. Interesting to hear about the Reiki and how it kind of works with the sound bath as well. So just to kind of recap, I kind of heard you're working with coaches in different capacities as a mentor, ICF accreditation, supervision, and then also a group ICF mentoring that you do with Natasha and Marcus.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have one-to-one work with adults. And then you also have your work in schools where you're working with teenagers and then the adults that support the teenagers. So I
Yes.
assume teachers, pastoral care, and the likes.
Yeah.
Is that kind of where your revenue streams come from, those three elements?
Yeah, pretty much. Yep, absolutely.
And I see more and more now. I think my colleague sent me an article recently how I think 95% of coaches have portfolio careers. That seems to be the trend more and more now, that it's kind of a hybrid of lots of different things rather than just one thing. Do you see that as well across the kind of the landscape?
Yes, certainly the coaches that I work with, actually I would say a mixture. I would say some coaches are doing just pure coaching, and some are just working with individuals as coaches, and they just see individuals day in, day out. Some are working as pure coaches but working within organizations, or as internal coaches, two slightly different things there. And then others do have portfolios. I choose a portfolio because I love the variety. Certainly I can see an avenue where I could work just in one way, in one direction, with one stream of my work, but I definitely prefer the variety. It's just kind of who I am. Keeps everything interesting, and sometimes sometimes one area of work can get quite can get a bit heavy or a bit intense, and so other work then helps to kind of lighten the load a bit, and it keeps it all quite enjoyable. So yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting mix you've got there. Different elements, and
use different parts of my brain as well.
Yeah, I guess that too. And my context of you is really a kind of education coach, because you did the youth and education coaching CPD that I sat on, but obviously there's these other elements, the resilience and the well-being. Do they really just tie in all together anyway as a way you deliver your coaching? Would you say they're distinct things, or is it all really an amalgamation of your coaching process?
I would say that the emotional resilience and well-being work comes into the work within schools, and then outside of school, my school work, the area I tend to work in is around emotional resilience and well-being. So the work in schools is a bit more particular in how it sort of the form of it, if you like, but it's definitely around emotional resilience and well-being. We get a lot of very anxious teenagers at the moment, and that was pre-COVID, and then post-COVID it's definitely got exponentially worse. So there's an awful lot of support and work to be done with teenagers in that area.
Yeah, I bet, particularly after the last few years. So before we kind of dive into that area, because I'm interested to explore how you built this education and coaching kind of arm to your business, what happened before you qualified with Animas? When did you qualify, and what were you doing before?
So originally I qualified as a Montessori teacher, and the work of Maria Montessori is fascinating. She was, she was turn of the century, last century, and she worked extensively with young people, with really young children. She initially started work with disabled children before moving on to able-bodied children. And her work primarily focused around encouraging or working with children to help them, support them to become independent. So you get to a point where the child says, I can do it by myself. So in that way of working, you need to see the child as whole, literally whole, creative and resourceful. And where do we see that? It shows up in coaching too. So I started originally as a Montessori teacher. I loved the philosophy of it. I really engaged with that. But then further down the line, I moved away from that, and then re-engaged with work in a different way, working as a massage therapist, qualified massage therapist, sports therapist, acupressure on-site massage therapist, Reiki practitioner, and started bringing that into big corporations and then into schools. And whilst I was working in that way, body work, people brought not just their physical tension, but also their emotional tension as well, and then tensions in the mind as well. So That then led me to run workshops in well-being and bringing meditation and mindfulness into that practice as well, because I've always done meditation and mindfulness. It's always been part of my life. And as that work progressed and expanded, kind of thought, I think I need to add something more to my bow here. And I came across the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival, where Nick Bolton was talking about coaching on his stand, and that seemed to be an absolutely perfect fit. And really things have progressed since, from there and evolved. So I joined up, I think it was 2011, qualified in beginning of 2012, and then just expanded my coaching business from there, and then came back to Animas as a mentor for students to help, students to qualify, and then brought in a couple of CPDs for Animas, wrote and brought in a couple of those, and then I was taken on as one of their trainers. So that's kind of evolved, and through that whole process of turning into a coach, I had been working as a mentor within a school alongside all of that, and as my background in Montessori teaching and that sort of philosophy connected very deeply with the philosophy of the coaching work that I did as well. So those sort of things are lining up, and I'm working as a mentor in a school, and they approach me and say, we're having real problems with the counsellors that we keep employing, and it's not really working out. That it's not what we want. It's not how we want to progress. We know that you're a coach. Would you be interested in sort of exploring that as a possibility? I was like, yeah, sure. That sounds like a really interesting line of work. And so gradually, with time and a bit of kind of toing and froing and negotiation, I started to work as a coach within the school, and that work has grown and grown. So that's where we are today. Yeah.
Interesting. So it kind of came as just an offer, really, that someone made to you based on you coaching in the world and them knowing you've been a coach as after you did mentoring. Was the work really distinct, though, the coaching and the mentoring, after you went in to start coaching? Was it more an extension of what you were already doing, or was it actually something else? Because you say you were mentoring there originally.
Yes, I was mentoring there originally. So that work was absolutely distinct and separate, absolutely. So the work that I then started to do as a coach was very much more around well-being and very much non-advisory. But when you're working with young people, there are it's very interesting. It's quite different in that the nature of the relationship is different, because they are teenagers. There is a natural hierarchy that you then have to work quite hard against in order to be able to maintain a relatively equal relationship. But then also within that relationship, because they have a lack of experience of life, you are offering more in that space. It's not advisory. I wouldn't say it's advisory, but you're offering more possibilities into the space for one to choose from.
Yeah, and I think it'd be interesting to kind of go down that road a little bit, because I speak to a lot of prospective coaches and coaches in training who are really interested to work within youth and education. And just, it might be really interesting to hear about the nuances of applying coaching within school systems and education systems and how you went about doing that. So if you were to just give a bit more detail, what's the difference for you between working with adults and young people? What's the key differences?
Key differences is definitely the dynamic that you have with a young person, and the work involved in order to have a much more sort of relatively equal relationship within that space, as I've just said. There is also, I would say, and again, this is not completely, we can generalize really, but it's not completely definitively adults or young children, and young people. But with young people, there's often a lack of language, for example, around emotion, or lack of awareness. So being able to explore and unpick that with a young person, so offering them tools in order to be able to unpick and become aware of what is going on for them and help them to raise awareness around that can be really, really interesting and useful. You're also often working with relationship dynamics, with friendships and with parents. There's a lot less apparent autonomy for young people. So when you're working with adults, you know, sometimes the direction you go down a direction of, oh, well, I could move house, or I could, you know, get a different job, or, you know, something like that. Young people are in education and there's nowhere else they can be. They have to be in that education. And you're often working with the limitations of just the external limitations. So a lot of the work tends to be much more around the internal rather than the external situation, because often there's so much less autonomy in that situation. You're also working within the confines of you know, safeguarding is really important. So you have to be very clear on that, and what's appropriate, and what's not appropriate, and what needs to be signposted for safeguarding and so on. So you have to work within the policies of the school that you're in, and also, you know, the law. And also there's an aspect of what the parents want as well. I'd say that's similar in some situations when you're working with adults who, for example, are working when you're working as an internal coach, because there's that hierarchy of what often the boss wants their client to receive through coaching, or the things that they want to explore through that. And you can get that also you know, sort of mirrored in a school setting as well, where the teacher, form teacher maybe, or the deputy pastoral, or the parent would like you to coach Flossie around a particular topic. So there's often those aspects too.
So you have to kind of navigate those really, and I guess it's different stakeholders when you're working with the teacher and the children, or the parents and the children.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more nuance and I guess difference between how you might coach out in the world with adults and how you will with young people. As I hear you speak, I was kind of thinking, you've got a background of working in schools. You were trained as a Montessori teacher, you were already mentoring in schools. What would you say to people who would like to work in schools and education systems as coaches, but don't have that background? Because I guess you're taking in so much transferable skills and knowledge. What about the people who want to break into that space, but have never been a teacher before, for example? What's your advice to them?
I would say definitely get a little bit more in terms of education. You know, maybe it's a CPD in youth and education coaching, or maybe it's also, there are lots of other kind of courses out there you can do to help support your understanding and knowledge around young people. So I definitely encourage a little bit more sort of background in terms of understanding young people and how they work. There's also an awful lot of books you can read, and sort of your own education around that too, which can be really, really interesting. Follow your nose a little bit too. There's lots on offer out there in terms of CPD. You might contact some teachers you know and ask them what they would suggest in terms of understanding more about how young people work and how they think. And also follow your nose in terms of what interests you have. More recently, I did a really interesting course in ACT, which is acceptance and commitment therapy. And I did it specifically also for teenagers too, because again, we work in a slightly different way with teenagers, and that was also really, really useful. So yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities out there, but it's worth getting a little bit more insight into how young people work and think.
So you've done extra CPD yourself, as you say, and are there any resources that stick out for you as kind of go-to great starting places, or books that you would refer to?
So many. Sitting down to a room and thinking, oh gosh, which book should I recommend? Nicola Morgan writes some really great books on teenagers and the teenage brain and how it works. She writes both for teenagers and for parents or adults in their lives as well, and that can be really interesting. Stephen Covey also has written some great books, and his son Sean Covey as well, on you know, a lot of sort of coaching techniques actually in terms of helping young people to really think about how they want to move forward with their lives. So Stephen Covey wrote more, his work was more for adults, and his son Sean did a lot more work for young people. In terms of other books, there's a really fantastic book, Teaching Happiness and Wellbeing in Schools, also has the title Learning to Ride Elephants, and that's by a guy called Ian Morris. A really interesting chap, really, really interesting work, and that is absolutely packed with ideas and really, really interesting ideas. A lot of very much kind of ideas that you can bring into coaching or into workshops to help to work with young people. He actually ran the Wellbeing program at, I think it was Wellington, under Anthony Selden, and it's very well known. So again, yeah, really hugely interesting book to read.
Nice. Thank you for those tips. And while we're in this kind of creating a youth and education coaching element to a coaching business space, if we're looking at less the high level and more like the detail, how does it work in the sense of, how do you get paid? Do you do programs with schools? I guess you don't do blocks of 6 sessions. There must be a bigger package, or are you employed as a part-time coach? How do you see people working with schools, teachers and young people in and around schools? What does it look like in terms of the packages?
So, I mean, I can speak for myself, but I think there's so many variations and so many possibilities with this. I know people who go into schools and offer workshops, for example, coaches who go into schools and offer workshops around different topics, which can be really, really interesting. Or who work as a freelance coach associated with a school or within a school, but freelance, so being paid for by the parents. In my case, I get paid by the school. I work 2 days a week, and I will see as many students as I can within that time, depending on who's on my list. People get referred to me by form teachers, or by the deputy pastoral, or even by parents, or even some students refer themselves and say, please go and see Miss Walker, please go and see Miss Walker. There's so many ways of working in terms of within schools. I do a lot of work one-to-one, and that's very much in collaboration with the deputy pastoral. So the deputy head who's in charge of pastoral care. And so there's a very collaborative approach. Is it important for this girl to see me? And if so, then, what are we looking at here? Is this going to be ongoing? Or could this be a kind of one-off session? So I will see students often for one-off sessions, quite often for quite a few more sessions, maybe 6, maybe 10 sessions. And then there's a small number of students who I will continue to see fairly regularly over a year or so, because things don't necessarily shift that quickly, and more challenges come up as they grow up, and as they, teenagers. It's one of those things that teenagers are changing all the time. A year 7 student is so different when they come to year 9. A year 9 student, the same year 9 student, is almost unrecognizable in year 12. They are shifting and changing. It's like being on sand. They're shifting and changing in their mental processes and how they feel all the time. Yeah, I think there's a lot of possibilities of working within schools. I work a lot one-to-one, but I also run, for example, leadership workshops for the sixth form. And I also run wellbeing days for the staff. And I think it will depend very much on the relationship that you have with your school that you're working with or want to work with, and how how creative they are and how creative you are in how that collaboration can expand.
Yeah, I get the essence that it's workshops, a combination of workshops, one-to-one work with students or adults in the school, and perhaps longer programs. As I think about that, I'm wondering how people make that initial step, because you were offered based on the fact that you were already working in the school. I think I hear people talking about setting up pilot programs and offering to run them for free.
Yeah.
Is that something that you see as working out in the world? I mean, maybe you've got experience of that or not. Definitely.
I think there are a lot of ways. I mean, in other work, so my massage work within schools, I was cold calling, and I sent marketing letters to schools to say, this is what I'm doing. Is this something you might be interested in? I can come in and do a demonstration. So I always recommend coaches who are interested, I always recommend use the networks you have. Most people have been to school or have had children go to school, so have some connections with some schools, either themselves or through friends. So use the connections you have, get to know schools. Schools are inundated with information and people offering things and so on. So I think a lot of this work is done best through that personal recommendation or that personal relationship that you can build up through networking. It can be really useful to offer, I think there's a certain amount of trust that needs to be built. before a school will allow you, as you know, a complete stranger, to come in and work with their students. So where that trust is built up through personal recommendation from someone else or another school, or whether that trust is built up by doing one-off workshops for the staff, for example, or one-off workshops for the sixth form, or whatever it might be. So getting in there, getting your foot in the door, it's really about building those trusting relationships. I know a lot of schools are really tight for budgets as well. So doing some things for free can be a really great way of giving something back, offering a service, but also building up that relationship. And then when they do have the money, maybe you'll be the first person they'll turn to. So yeah, there's a lot of that.
Yeah, it feels like it's a real relationship building game. I think in general across the coaching landscape, but particularly within that education piece. Okay, nice. So if we were to look at working in schools as a coach, how do you see the landscape of that these days? Because back in the day when I was in schools, it was like careers advisor. Yeah. Like, go and see the careers advisor, they'll tell you what to do. Now I see more and more counsellors and therapists showing up in unis. I used to work for an NGO that delivered a lot of coaching in schools, so I think it's growing and growing. But how's that landscape looking for you? Are you seeing more and more schools cotton on to coaching and wanting that as a preferred method?
Definitely, absolutely. I see it's one of those things that I say, you know, it often starts off in the corporate world. Things often trickle down from corporate world, trying things out, seeing what works. They find things that work, like coaching, that trickles then down into sort of the more private education sector, then trickling down into the state education sector. So I definitely see more and more coaches getting into schools. I think it's seen as a great addition to a wellbeing unit to have not just counsellors and therapists, but also coaches as well. And also, to be fair, I think students really enjoy working with coaches. There is still stigma around working with counsellors and therapists, and I think there is huge value in working with coaches and author, you know, a counsellor or a therapist. But whilst there also remains a little bit of a stigma in some cases around going to see the counsellor or going to see the therapist, a coach is like, oh yeah, I'm going to see my coach. Yeah, I'm going to see a coach. It's a little bit more, it's seen as a little bit more, doable, a bit more kind of, part of anyone's day to day.
Yeah, I like that.
And then as a coach, I will then be adamant about referring students as well. So if they do need therapy and counselling, they're going to go to the therapist or the counsellor. I'm not there to replace that sort of work either. So
you work in a kind of systemic approach with pastoral care counsellors and therapists if they're in the school, and you're all communicating. I assume that's the case around safeguarding and referrals and so forth.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, that's great to hear that it's becoming more, I guess, dominant or known in schools, because I think I remember when I was in the training for Animas, one of the things I thought was like, wow, this needs to be taught at schools just as a standard. Do you see it ever happening? Like
yes.
Emotional resilience, you go in and do these workshops, surely we should just have this on the curriculum.
Yeah, it'd be nice. In some ways, yes, it is in there, PHSE. There is a program for pastoral education, but I think we could definitely do more. There's so much more we could create and provide for young people. Just learning about themselves. They spend so much time in school learning about all sorts of other things, learning about some really valuable things, physics and chemistry and history and so on. But our experience of the world starts with us. So it's I think, absolutely vital to learn about yourself. And to learn about that at a time when that is also being formed can be really, really useful.
Yeah, because it's an early intervention in a way, isn't it? Rather than waiting down the line for us to find out all this stuff.
Absolutely. And the majority of mental health, mental health issues begin in teenage years.
I bet. It reminds me of that book. I don't think I've not read it, but it's Why Didn't Anyone Tell Me This? And I always think about that book when I think about coaching in schools, and how we have these moments where we learn about ourselves, and how nice that would be if we had that in the school system, for the young people and adults. Great. So, looking back on your career in youth and education, and coaching in that space, what advice would you give yourself or other people who want to create a coaching business in that space?
Give yourself time. So maybe build up other streams of income as well alongside that. But I think it's a highly rewarding area to move into. Don't expect huge financial payback from it though. Schools are strapped for cash. There's no two ways about it. Private schools as well as state schools. So it can be useful to have other streams of income. It is highly rewarding, but give yourself time and build up those relationships. Think about what you can offer. Think about how you can add value and offer what you could offer a school, whether that's working for staff or offering things to staff or offering things to the students, and see where that goes. Build up relationships.
Nice. And from my experience of delivering coaching in and around school systems, that is one of the questions I had for you is people going to make money a living off of that? What I noticed was universities have money, schools underneath don't. It's just because it's funded by the government, where I guess universities are a bit more private, or there's a lot more funding for them because they're charging for spaces. Do you ever coach in and around universities? What's your experience of that kind of distinction in terms of where people can make money?
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear you say that, because my experience, I've not worked in universities, but my experience of universities through young people that I know has been that they're really strapped for cash. And the offerings of support for mental health, for example, or coaching or anything around well-being is minimal. I think particularly since COVID as well, I think budgets have really been squeezed. So that's really interesting to hear you say that. I'm not sure. I couldn't say for certain, but that's my experience. Well,
my context is pre-COVID, actually.
Yeah.
I haven't been in and around working directly with universities since then, so perhaps things have moved on in terms of budgets.
Yes, maybe. I mean, I think you can make a living. It depends what you want to make a living, what kind of a living you want to make. It depends what lifestyle you want, what kind of a income you want, and so on. I think it's definitely possible to make a living at it, working for a school who's going to reimburse you enough. But yeah, it will depend on how you want to work very much.
Yeah, and there are other programs, or I guess businesses out there that deliver in schools in a different way. I'm thinking of Yes Futures and perhaps Heads Up, which was set up by Sonia Gill. They go in and train head teachers in primary schools, I think. And Yes Futures is an NGO that delivers coaching for young people. So I've seen a lot of social enterprise or social impact projects that get funding from the government, set up by coaches that go in to then deliver, I guess, rollouts of bigger schemes in schools. What's your experience of that or knowledge of that?
Again, only secondhand, because I know a lot of coaches who worked in those areas, Yes Futures and so on. Yeah, it sounds really good. It sounds really positive and really impactful. My understanding from Yes Futures is it is often a process that you coach around. You're coaching a process rather than the work that I do is much more kind of free flowing, and you can. I mean, I can kind of do what I like in a sense as a coach, follow the path that works best for the client. So I think it's really fantastic that there are programs out there. I do wonder what their lifespan will be, and how effective they will be within schools. And I also hope that they don't take too much away from, the kind of other work that coaches can do, like going into schools and doing workshops and running programs themselves and so on. So yeah, I think they're a great idea. I think it all lifts the idea of coaching within for young people and so on. But it would be nice to see a good balance of different types of work with young people using coaching.
Yeah, it makes sense. Variety is key, right? Working with everyone within the system in different ways.
Yeah.
Nice. Really interesting to hear about that. I guess your work in that space. But if we're going to go back to your journey to creating this business now, I'm assuming here that the resilience piece came after working in schools and you seeing a need. I heard that you had the mindfulness work before, so it sounds like you were an entrepreneur before and you were going out and delivering workshops, massaging, and so you're coming in almost as like one of these integrative practitioners who have modalities and they wanted to add another bow, as you say. How did you choose these niches? Did they find you? Did they fall on your lap? What was that process like?
It's been incredibly organic. I really think there's so much value in seeing a need and following that. Seeing a need, asking yourself if you could facilitate that, or if you can meet that need, if that's something that rings true for you, if that rings true for your direction as well, and then following through with that. So, for example, a really clear one for me was, I trained as a Montessori teacher, then I had my own kids, and it was like, I don't want to have kids at school and at home, that was just too much. So that was the point at which I retrained. And in that moment, I retrained in something I enjoyed doing. I just thought, I've always enjoyed massage, and it seems like a weird thing to do, but I really enjoy it. So I'm going to retrain as a massage therapist. So I retrained, following that course. My teacher really enjoyed teaching me and said I was good at what I did. So she encouraged me to do the sports massage. That led to acupressure on-site massage and so on. And then, I just having conversations with people, got into working in corporations. It kind of happened organically. And then working in corporations, I was working in those corporations thinking, yeah, this is good. This is really necessary and really powerful, but it's not working for me. I need to find something that works for me and my timetable. I was having a conversation with a teacher, a deputy head teacher of a school in Notting Hill. And she said, well, you know what? I would love a massage at work. It'd be so cool to have you in. So, okay, let's see if that works. So I then started working in her school doing massage for staff. It gave me an idea of what worked and what didn't work. It didn't work brilliantly within that school format because it was quite a small school, but it gave me a sense of how it could work, what the potential was, what the possibilities were for working within schools. And so then I, as I said, wrote a marketing letter, put together a marketing letter, sent that out to specific schools that I thought would be a really nice place to work, that could, benefit from the service that I want to offer. And that took me into working within, took me to working some really top private schools in and around Hammersmith. That's the area I wanted to work in. And it evolved from there. And then, again, seeing that need in staff and seeing the kind of emotional tension coming out, you start talking, you start meeting that need, because it felt to me like it's something that I could meet at that point. And then keeping myself open to possibility, I came across the coaching school, and that led to being a coach and so on. So each phase has just been about being open to possibility, believing in myself, and then following through. So, for example, I think I was doing some mentoring for Animas, just, on the side, as it were, and being a coach. And so have my coaching business, have my massage business, doing really, really well. Nick puts out a question on the Animas Lounge. Is there anyone out here who'd like to run a CPD? And I was like, I'd love to run a CPD. I'd love to write a CPD. That'd be great. Yeah, cool. Why not? Whether I'm any good at it, I don't know. But that's not for me to really kind of think about. Yes, I put myself out there. I'm going to offer something and see if it gets taken up. See if they like my writing, the written course, and see if that works, and then deliver it and see if those people like it. So there's something around putting yourself out there, following a need, seeing if it resonates with you, and then following through. See if it works.
It sounds like most of it did work for you as well. And as I look at your signature, there's like so many parts to it. And you've built this other element to your coaching business of working with other coaches as a supervisor, a mentor, an ICF mentor for accreditation. Is that just an extension of what you've just explained to me, of seeing a space that there's a need that you like to work in, and just adding these bows, adding these strings rather?
Absolutely. So the work with Natasha and Marcus, for example, mentoring other coaches, that simply came from noticing that there were coaches out there who were looking for accreditation, looking for someone to do their mentoring to get their accreditation, and having a chat with Natasha and Marcus and saying, this is something that we're quite interested in. This is something that we could offer. This is something that could be really exciting. Let's have a go. Let's see what we can offer. Let's see what we can put together. See if it takes off. And it did massively. We've now taken well over 50 coaches through the program, and almost all, I think, bar one, have passed first time. So it's really nice to see. And for me, it's about seeing the possibilities, seeing the opportunities as they come up, seeing if that resonates with something in you, and what you can offer back, how you can serve that opportunity.
And along that journey, I guess that's 10 years or more since qualifying with Animas. Is there any grit in there? Any avenues you went down where things didn't resonate? Any days where you're like, it's just not working? What does that sound like or look like for you, that journey?
So, for example, I did a course some time ago in writing an online program, like creating my own online course. And it was a really interesting process because I learned all about it. I learned how to market it and and all the ins and outs of it, the practicalities of it. But then writing it myself, I found myself sort of engaging with it, but not having moments of passion about it, but not really fully engaging with it. And it ended up being one of those projects that sort of went by the wayside. Who knows? It might come back at some point. Who knows? But certainly there are times when you try things and they don't necessarily follow through. It doesn't kind of ring true somehow, and they fall by the wayside. Certainly, sometimes they're difficult. Some of the coaching sessions, some of the training sessions I've done in running the Diploma. You come out of those and think, oh, I'm just rubbish. I'm just absolutely useless. I can't possibly train. This is just, they've seen through me. No. And, at that point, self-care is really important, but also reaching out for help, reaching out for support, having conversations with people. It's I think it's something that's also particularly interesting, this idea of self-care. Particularly when it comes to emotional resilience, I think there's quite a strong idea around emotional resilience that is about being on your own and being emotionally resilient and being almost like an island and not having anyone help you. But I would say it's the opposite of that. It absolutely is not about that at all. It's about recognizing your own strengths, doing what you need in terms of self-care, but also knowing when you need to ask for help, knowing when you need to lean on other people, knowing that you have created the community around you of people to lean on, recognizing the vibrations that where the people who you surround yourself with, make sure that those are the sort of people who you have a good vibration with, you've got a good energy with. They lift you up, you lift them up. So emotional resilience is not about us as individuals, it's about us as a community.
I'm glad you said that as well, because sometimes I think about emotional resilience as stoic, just being stoicism, and I can see you're really passionate about that subject as well, because your arm gestures were going all over the place as you talked about well-being and resilience, and clearly this is something you do in your coaching in schools and one-to-one, right? If we were to look at your coaching practice, one-to-one with adults outside the school space and outside of working with coaches, how do you get clients? How are they attracted to you? Where do they find you?
I'm a bit random. and actually this is something that goes through all my business. Is it really annoys my husband actually. I simply ask the universe. I do put myself out there. I've got a website, I've got myself on the Life Coach directory and a couple of other directories, but by and large that is the majority of my marketing. I will get to a point sometimes when things are looking a little bit quiet and I say, oh, could really do with another couple of coaching clients. And literally within a week I get another couple of emails through. So that's my marketing program.
Wow, I love it. I love it.
And I truly, I really truly believe in that sort of sense of law of attraction. What you put out there, what you request, done with the right vibration, with the right energy, things will come your way. That doesn't mean to say you don't meet rubbish along the way. That doesn't mean to say that you don't hit huge walls and huge challenges in your life. But it just means you have, it's that part of that community that you can ask the universe too.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me. I think I agree with you, and I think the way you say it as well, in terms of with the right energy, because there's one thing, it's about coming from a place of intention, I think, isn't it? Energetically, that you really want it to happen, rather than just standing in front of the mirror saying, oh, I really want to win the lottery, because it doesn't work like that, or at least I don't think it does. I've not tried it. But that's interesting that you say that's your marketing strategy, and clearly it's worked for you. So that's it stood the test of time, should we say. See, outside of, I guess, putting yourself out there with this energy that you want to be a coach and in these spaces, and this is what you do, are there any places where you put your name apart from the directory and a website? Do you do any posts into social media?
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, mostly LinkedIn and Facebook. I put myself out there, not that much, but yeah, I do sometimes. So yeah, those are the only two places really I would say I put myself out, particularly, and just talking to people. Yeah,
one-to-one, right? Meeting people out and about, and they ask you what you do.
Yeah.
Do you enroll many people from those types of conversations, or are friends of those people, acquaintances?
Sometimes, yes. Yeah, sometimes. I say the majority is me sitting at home going, really do another couple of coaching clients, and seeing what comes through, and it's a nice way to work. So I would say the majority comes from literally asking the universe.
Love it.
With the right intention.
Yeah, I'm going to do that straight after our call. I could probably do a few more. So let's just say you put that message out there into the social media, into the universe. Clients just sending you emails? Are they finding you? My assumption is, before you answer the question, is you're established. You've been in the game for 10 years and you've got this signature with all these things in it. People are just coming to you because referrals, and they know who you are in the scene, if you like. Is there an element of that going on? Or
I would, yeah, there probably is, to be honest, to be fair. Absolutely, there's definitely an element of that. Having been around for a while, and I think also working for Animas is also really great, because it's you're getting really into that community of coaches. So particularly for the mentoring and the supervision, that's really a great place to be. But also through, for example, Life Coach Directory. I would say a majority of my clients, other than Animas, come through the Life Coach Directory, to be honest. And again, it's like ask the universe, and then suddenly there's a couple of emails. So yeah, that's pretty much how it works. Yeah.
Nice.
Got the question now, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that was it. I'm thinking about you on the Life Coach Directory now, and on your website. I guess it means you have to be really clear in your speaking on your website about who you are and the space you're coming from, if that's kind of how people have been attracted to you from just reading that and looking at that. Did that take you a while to refine that, to get comfortable with talking about that? What's that process like for you?
Absolutely. I think when I started coaching, it was really clunky, and I really didn't have any idea of what I wanted to say or how I wanted to say it and who I was. So that's definitely refined over time. And I always say that to coaches when they're starting out. Don't think that the way that you're talking about yourself now will be the same as it will be in 3 years' time, or even a year's time. You will refine that. You will refine everything about your coaching practice. It will, it will change. It will evolve over time, and that's really important that it does that. In fact, so yeah, that's definitely evolved over time and shifted and changed. As I've more found my niche and who I want to work with and how I want to work. And really, when you're speaking to your audience, you're wanting to be able to speak to the problems that they're facing, not necessarily to what you can offer, but more to what's going on for the person that you're speaking to, how you can help them, how you can be of service to them, what you will help them to how you will help them to move forward.
Can you give me some examples?
So if I go out there and say, oh yes, I'm an emotional resilience coach, I'm a wellbeing coach, yeah, that doesn't necessarily land. What might land is, so if you're having problems with procrastination, if you're finding it challenging to get down to your work, if you're finding maybe exams or work stressful, that's something that we can work with in coaching. We can explore and find ways to help you to release that stress, to let go of that stress, and be able to have a clearer head, have more clarity and purpose and confidence.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That was just kind of like completely off the top of my head, but you're speaking to the problem rather than talking about who you are.
Yeah, and I guess people can connect with that then, can't they? Otherwise it's conceptual to them when we speak about what we do as coaches. When you say the word procrastination, I was like, my eyes lit up. I was like, can you help me with that? I was like, okay, it does work then, how you're saying it. Nice. So if we're looking at your business, we've kind of looked at where you were and what, how you've got here and some of that journey. Before I look at the future, I'm just curious, what major, I guess, emotional hurdles did you have to overcome to become a coach? Were there any days where it just felt tough and you didn't want to do it, or was this always smooth sailing, speaking to the universe in flow?
I wouldn't say it's all been smooth sailing, speaking to the universe, no, but I think I've always felt, if I look back on my life, coaching has always been something that I've kind of naturally done. It's something I've been drawn to. Having conversations. I've always loved people watching, observing people, observing the emotions and the thoughts as they kind of, go over there, look at someone's face and you can see what's going on for them. Again, we're not making any assumptions, but then that gives me the opportunity to ask a question and to be curious and to explore and unpack. And how people, what makes people tick? God, that's fascinating. Really, really interesting. And that's always been something that's inspired me and something I've been passionate about. Right from the early days, for example, doing Montessori teaching, what makes a child go and choose a particular thing to play with? What makes them want to do that rather than that? And how can we make that really the best experience for them? What will that entail? And then moving on from there to massage, to coaching, to well-being. Again, I think for me, I have a very high value on peace, on that sense of inner peace, being able to let go of all the turmoil and the sort of conflicts that we have. And so for me, a lot of my work around well-being is to help people to connect with their own peace. And that's just something I've always been passionate about. So yeah, there have definitely been challenges. I would say my challenges have mostly been on the business front, mostly been on the kind of, I've got to be organized and I'm still not organized, but all that kind of thing, the sort of the creation of the sort of more business side of coaching work. And that's my challenge, definitely. Something that's continually evolving.
Evolving peace. I love that answer. So positive as well. I was really digging around for some grit there or some negative stuff, but the answer was so positive and really nice. I guess painted a really nice picture of your, I guess, journey to creating this coaching practice. So looking forward, what's next for you in terms of what you'd like to create?
So many possibilities. Never say never. I mean, anything could happen. I have just come off, literally last week, we were running this retreat for staff at this school. I was running that with my husband, so we were hosting that together. And that was phenomenal. That was a really great kind of journey with that, and great, to deliver that too. So there's definitely possibility there in creating retreats for people that include coaching, that include sound baths, that include Reiki, and creating that piece, creating a safe space for people to be and to unwind and to just touch that piece within them that then they can take off into the world. So creating retreats is definitely a possibility moving to the future. I would also love to work more with business leaders. So that's something that I want to expand on. And also, building the supervision and mentoring side of my business as well. So yeah, lots of possibility. And who knows what else might happen. I mean, you know, if I if I took myself back 10 years and told myself that this is where I'd be now, I mean, really? Wow. So, you know, who knows what will the next 10 years will bring.
Yeah. And if you did look back at yourself 10 years ago, what would you say to yourself as you're about to embark on this journey that you've been on? Any advice that you give yourself?
That's a good question. What would I say to myself? I think I'd say, you can absolutely do this. You can absolutely rock this. But just work out the business side of things. Maybe do a course in something, you know. But you have no idea where this is going to take you, and the sky's the limit. The sky is the limit. And that's kind of what I say to all my coaching students when I see them for the first time. It's like, you have no idea what you just started. You have no idea, and you could go, you know, the sky is the limit in terms of the direction you can take with coaching. All sorts of possibilities.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a lovely place to end. Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation and finding out a bit about your journey. I guess moving forward, we'll put your website in the comments under all the places we post this. But is there anywhere else that people can find you? Anywhere good? I know you mentioned the Life Coach Directory. LinkedIn.
Yep. Can definitely put me on the LinkedIn. Emily Walker, Johnson. But I'll share my LinkedIn profile with you. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, we'll put your website in the comments. But thank you so much, Emily. I'm really interested to see how you develop these retreats and where they go. Sounds good.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, Princey. It's been really enjoyable. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.